Hey guys, welcome to another review here on my channel. I'm Michael Keane, and I want to talk about some wrestling stuff, and unfortunately it's not going to be the most positive talk in the world, but here we are. Before we even get started, I want to give a shout out to All That Is Man. He is our latest patron over on the Patreon, and the latest in the What the Fuck tier. That's the tier of patrons who pay $10 or more for me talking at cameras and stuff. It's called What the Fuck because I can't imagine why anyone would do it, but here we are. Now, there are several of them. All That Is Man is the latest. Thank you so much, All That Is Man. You rock my socks, G. Anyway, couldn't do it without you. I honestly, the fact that I have patrons emboldens me to keep these videos going. I probably wouldn't be as consistent if I didn't receive those donations to my cause. I don't get it, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, All That Is Man. Anyway, let's talk about a movie. Powerbomb is a new release for 2020. It was started back in 2017 as an Indiegogo campaign and did pretty well. It earned over $10,000 on Indiegogo, which, you know, is way better than I've ever done on Indiegogo, I'll tell you that much. Powerbomb, directed by two names that I'm I still haven't figured out how to pronounce, and I don't know why I do a show where I have to say directors' names. It's always bad because I always fuck it up, but R. Zachary Schildwachter and BJ Colangelo. I don't know. I follow her on Twitter, by the way. She's really great. BJ is fantastic. I've never had to say her name out loud before, so I've never really thought about it until this very moment. And I feel bad, BJ, if you're watching. I would love to know how to pronounce your name so that if I ever have to say it again, I don't fuck it up because I feel weird about it. Anyway, I wouldn't know about this movie if it wasn't for BJ. She mentioned it a couple times on her Twitter account, which... yeah, why wouldn't you? So I went and I bought it on Amazon. I think it was like $6 or $7, something like that. Something that I it's so small I don't remember the amount. So I bought it for cheap, and I sat on it for a little while. I bought it right around the time it first went up. I kind of ignored it for a bit because I knew I wanted to review it, but I wanted to have, a relatively short period of time between watching it and reviewing it. So I watched it about 2 days ago, and it is not amazing. And it makes me sad to say that because A, I'm a big wrestling fan. I love wrestling. I actually used to be a photographer for a wrestling promotion just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I love wrestling. Right off the bat, just throw it out there. I think that the fact that this is it's not really a horror movie, a thriller that is based around wrestling and the issues wrestlers face, I think is great. There's a story right at the heart of it, all about family and how wrestlers take all this time off away from family to, travel around the country and, for very little money. And it's kind of about the importance of family. I think that's great. That's a fantastic way to anchor your story about wrestling. Great. And I think that the film as a whole is a really good idea. I just think that the execution is kind of middling. And it pains me to say that, but it just kind of is. Side note before I forget, I love the Sickening Pictures logo. It has nothing to do with the movie. It's just the production company logo at the beginning of the film. I just really like it. I don't have anything to add to that. I just think it's really cool. So whoever thought that up, it's kind of like a fun Rocky Horror Picture Show meets, I don't know, neo-punk or something. Great stuff. But anyway, back to the movie. So the film follows Matt Cross, played by Matt Cross, and he is a wrestler in this little indie promotion. He's having a bad time. His manager sucks. His family wants him home. He, is not on the best, not on the best of times as a wrestler. And he is kidnapped by a man named Paul. And Paul is a wrestling super fan.
He's on the show now.
I hate this fucking ref. He's garbage. Jesus Christ.
He loves wrestling, really lives and breathes for wrestling while living at home and taking care of his sick mother. And he's psychotic, shock of shocks, and basically pulls the old misery on our hero. And Matt has to deal with that while his family tries to figure out where he is. And it all kind of comes to a conclusion of sorts. That's the best spoiler-free plot I can give you. If you've seen the poster for this movie, you kind of can imagine the disconnect upon watching it, having just seen that poster. I didn't know anything about this movie. I had seen something about the kidnapping plot, but I had not watched a trailer or anything. I just saw the poster, and I saw that BJ had made it, so I bought it. The poster, well, there's two of them. One poster, the more artistically inclined one, is fine. It's a good poster. It represents the movie close enough, so good job. But the poster that you see everywhere else, the one that's really right there in your face on Amazon, the one that's really selling it, could not be further from the truth. It's not about a murderous wrestler. It's not a slasher movie. It's not even really a horror movie. It's not what it's being sold as. So right off the bat, there's a serious disconnect there that is problematic. A lot of this review is going to be bad stuff, so let's just get out of the way. The good stuff, the wrestling segment that starts off the film is really solid. I really enjoyed that. I love, as I said, the theme of family. I think that's really important, and I think that it's not necessarily the first place a lot of wrestling fans would go if they're making this kind of film. I think there is a mindset to kind of ignore that part and focus just on the wrestling side of things without kind of getting into the family dynamics. But this one, doesn't do that. It does take the less flashy route to get where it wants to go. So that's nice. Matt Cross does a good job. A lot of wrestlers are not amazing actors. They're usually competent actors. I think that he is not amazing, but he's definitely competent to good. And he carries what he can with the film. I think that he is, he's fine. He's perfectly fine. He does what he needs to do. I was not as impressed with the other actors. The guy that plays Solomon, the manager, is pretty humorous. He has some really good lines.
I don't know what the hell a Lego death match is exactly, but it sounds expensive.
So Wes Allen, who plays Paul, he wrote the script and came up with the original story. He wrote it with the directors, so they all had a part in it, but it looks like it was really his baby, I guess, which, I can't say too much because I definitely made an entire film that I wrote for myself to start off my career, and it is not a good film.
My name is MC Dalton, and I am the best hacker in the cybergrid.
So I guess I can't really say too much about that, but not usually the best idea to write a psychotic character for yourself. It generally just means that you want to show off, and that's what it feels like. By the way, Wes Allen might be a great actor. I don't know. I've never seen him in anything else, but I guess this is a good place to start talking about the negatives. Paul's not good. Paul kind of sucks. And not in the way he's supposed to suck. Paul, as a character, is meant to be a piece of shit. He's a psychotic fanboy. It's kind of like Patton Oswalt in that movie Big Fan, but taken to the extreme, which, I liked Big Fan. I wasn't big on Big Fan, but it's definitely a good movie. The thing about Big Fan is it relies on a central performance to carry it. If that performance wasn't great, then the movie falls apart. And Patton Oswalt puts in a pretty good performance. I haven't seen it since it came out, so this is all based on memory, but this movie does not have a strong central performance. In fact, it has no really strong performances. As I said, Matt Cross is good, but he's not great. And really, with how vanilla Matt Cross's character is, you need a villain that really sets the screen on fire, and Wes Allen does not do it. I hate to say it. I can tell he tried. I really can, but it just doesn't work. He just screams all of his lines. Screams is a strong word. He projects all of his lines very loudly. It's very pronounced.
The world doesn't know a shit!
And there's really no subtlety to it whatsoever. And I think subtlety in these movies is very important. This film has almost no subtlety in its bones. And again, that would be fine if the performance was there. And it's just not. He's not terribly charismatic. He's not terribly dynamic. He's not really even much of a character. He's just this guy with family issues who's really mad at a wrestler for, I guess, not being the hero that he wants him to be. He's just basically the same exasperatingly high-note performance the entire film, and while the indictment of toxic fan culture is admirable, it never takes a moment to stop and consider the toxic fan's point of view beyond, well, he's crazy. There's some lip service to his family life, of course, but it doesn't go anywhere. There's nothing that really strikes you as real or important about what he's saying. And hey, I'm not saying the film needs to agree with the toxic fans' point of view, but I think it would have made the film far more engaging if we spent more time seeing Paul's more vulnerable side. As it is, we get the one puppet scene, which is good, and it gives us the Cliff's Notes of psychodom, but it's too little, too late in the film. And it, like everything else, it never really goes anywhere. It's just this one scene where he has a hand puppet, and then that goes away, and it never leads to anything. It almost feels like like the filmmakers saw that they needed a scene to really dive into this guy's psychosis that might be a little creepy, and then came up with this puppet thing, because I guess Wes has a puppet, maybe, and they made the scene, and it doesn't really gel with what else we're seeing in the film. You know, he's a fan loser who can't be his hero, and so he takes it out on the very hero that he has a problem with. Burp. It just never goes anywhere or knows how to make this guy just a little bit relatable, which would in turn make him more real and his downfall more cathartic. Now, the second biggest issue is the script. Where is the second act exactly? I don't know. I guess this is one of those scripts where I'm sure if you break it down, you can, find the points that make up the climax and, where the second act begins, where it ends, where the third act begins. I really like watching it. It felt like I skipped a huge chunk of movie and then it just ended. And, I haven't gone back to break it down scene by scene. I don't think I will. It feels like a thriller devoid of conflict. And obviously there is conflict inherent in the premise. I mean, you have a guy locking another dude up, chaining him to a wall, electrocuting him. It's there on paper, kinda, but then when you actually look at it, like, it's just a guy talking to a guy, and then something happens and the movie ends. Which might work if you, again, have a little bit of dynamic performance, or you have a really interesting visual look or something like that, but it doesn't have that. And because of this lack of action, it just feels like nothing happens throughout the entire movie, and then it ends. And it has a good ending. Like, the ending actually works really well if it has all that stuff leading up to it. Now, I'm going to do a thing that I feel kind of douchey doing. I don't like doing this, but I'm going to kind of go into what I would have done just a little bit. This is not me saying that I'm better than the writers or the filmmakers in any way, shape, or form. It's just, having watched the movie, what I feel like they missed out on. So these are just things that could have been done to better utilize the runtime. First off, give a little bit more backstory on Paul. He has almost none. We get the gist from what he tells Matt Cross and what he says in the puppet scene, but we really don't get a good look at what this guy's life is like.
No, oh God, no, see? No, I'm not like that. I would never do that. I'm here to help.
I would like to see Paul make his decision to actually kidnap Matt Cross. I'd also love to see him kind of planning out the kidnapping, and not that, I mean, it doesn't really take a lot for him to kidnap Matt Cross, but I guess you'd have to go back and rewrite it so that there's a bit more to him kidnapping Matt. But I'd like to see him, going to the store, buying the chains, kind of like maybe figuring out what strength chain you need to hold a human being, how you need to reinforce the wall, whatever the case, but, weird things to kind of add to that character. And give us a bit more catharsis once he inevitably, reaches his conclusion. I feel like there's not much there in the final film. There could have been some in the script that they just nixed because of money issues or something. But I think that given very little money, I could have gotten those scenes shot. Which is not something that I have any special skills. Just saying that I think most people, if they put their minds to it, could come up with those scenes. It could also just be really sinister and funny at the same time to see him preparing to kidnap and torture a man. I also really think there should have been a moment where Matt Cross, and this is a bit of a spoiler, so if you plan on watching the movie going in completely fresh, then skip the rest of this review and go watch the movie and then come back. But anyway, I think that Matt Cross at some point should have had a moment of escape that is then thwarted by Paul in some way, shape, or form. This could have gone many different ways. I don't have any specific thought process on that, but generally it's nice to have that one moment in a film like this where the character thinks they have it, they make it out, maybe even make it out into the street, maybe even are like moments away from flagging down a cop, and then are at the last minute captured and brought back to their original low point and have to then figure it all out again, this time with even more restraints or more torture or whatever. You could get really gruesome with it or stay pretty chill. It doesn't really matter. It just needs some more conflict. You know, a good, strong thriller is built on conflict, a character having ups, having downs, ups and downs, succeeding, failing, succeeding again. It keeps the story going. And I don't feel like there's anything like that really keeping this story going. It just kind of, once it reaches that kidnapping point, after you have him kidnapped and that initial meeting with Paul, it kind of flatlines, and that was frustrating. Also, the whole subplot with Britt Baker and Ronnie Jonah? God, I suck at names. That whole subplot with the kind of family stuff happening while Matt has been kidnapped, really boring, really excessively boring, and not because of the story itself. I think that they're important story beats for the movie that is being made. I just think that, having characters just talk in a kitchen about their problems is not terribly dynamic. I think there could have been a better way of doing that. And the performances could have used a little direction, or a little more direction, rather. They never feel like real people in these scenes. There are scenes where they work. I think there's some stuff early on with the kid that works really well when they're in the backyard. I think that's really solid. But a lot of it going forward after that is a little iffy. Last thing I'm going to dump on this film about, it's not a pretty movie to look at. I think the wrestling at the beginning is pretty good overall. I think that, it helps that it's a very, I keep using the word dynamic. It's a very dynamic scene. It's watching wrestling. And if you like watching wrestling, it's a fun scene to watch. But then after that, once you get into the family stuff, once you get into the kidnapping and the torture, it's all very bland to look at. It just looks like a shot on DSLR movie, which, I don't expect it to not look like it was shot on a DSLR. I just would like to see more creativity in how you utilize that. My films have been shot on a DSLR and a VHS camcorder. I am not one to talk about the means of filmmaking. I just think that when you have very few resources, you have to learn to use those resources. And I don't feel like there was much of that in this movie. I think it was, I feel like there was an element of, well, these are our circumstances and we're just going to settle for that. That doesn't mean they didn't put work into it. I just for the record, I respect any filmmaker who makes a movie. That by itself is amazing on any sub $1 million budget. That is staggering. The fact that they did this for presumably just a hair over 10 grand, I guess. I don't know how much money went into this exactly. I didn't do my research because I suck. However much money was put into this, it definitely was not a lot. The fact that they made a feature-length film with whatever that money was, with whatever resources they had, fantastic, truly. But when you're in that situation, you have to learn to take your resources and use them to the best of your ability. And I just don't see that in this movie. And it makes me sad to say, again, I really like BJ. I don't know the other director or his work, but BJ is a really solid writer and a really fun personality. And it makes me sad that I didn't like her movie, but it is what it is. Again, I don't hate it though. I am frustrated by a lot of things with it, and that's why this video is basically just me ranting about my frustrations. If you really like wrestling, if you like Matt Cross, I really don't have any other ifs. If you want to support the horror community, the indie horror community, go ahead and buy this movie. It's, as I said, it's very cheap. That sends a little bit more money into the indie horror community. This is a great idea. I do really like the idea, and it shows a lot of strong creative skills that just, again, weren't properly utilized. Go out, support indie horror movies, and, hopefully the next movie that they put together is better. That's all I got to say. So, I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars.
You're full of all this hurt and this anger and greed and lust and all the things that make you weak.
If I'm being totally objective, it's probably less than that, but looking at it as what it is And the fact that I didn't hate watching it, I just was frustrated. You know, there's worse places to be. I was not bored out of my mind. I definitely, you know, watched it from beginning to end, and that was good. So 2.5 stars. Better luck next time. And yeah, thanks so much for watching this review. I'm sorry if I put a damper on anyone's parade. Is that how that phrase works? I'm not good at phrases. I'm not good at a lot of things. Anyway, go ahead and follow me on the Twitters and the Facebooks and Instagrams and links in the doobly-doo. And if you want to support me on Patreon, you can or not. It doesn't really matter too much. I mean, I like when people do that. It doesn't matter. Anyway, have a good time. Rock and roll. Go watch a movie.